Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to the GB3 Podcast. I am one half of your dynamic duo, the Reel Geno Reynolds.
And I am Bill HeiseNerd Fields. Well, Geno, you ready for the Bill Sounds Like Crap episode of the GB3 Podcast this week?
Oh, so you're Batman this week. Okay.
Well, I'm getting there, dude. Totally. I think my nose is probably I probably could fill a swimming pool with the amount that I've dripped.
Oh, lovely.
Day. It's lovely.
Yes. I've been saying, you're going to get about 95% of me, but then again, you probably don't want 100% of me because the world couldn't handle that.
Yeah.
So, Bill, why don't you fill everyone in on what we're going to be talking about today?
All right, so this week we're going to be talking about shared universes as our main topic, and then of course we're also going to start off with a couple of quick headlines for Gene and I to kind of discuss and talk about that we thought would be good to talk about. So starting off, I'm going to talk about an article that I read last week, about last Tuesday, about Microsoft has, for those that don't know, Microsoft offers a $9.99 subscription service that allows you access to a pretty extensive library of games. It's over 100 games. And it's got some pretty good franchises in it, but they just upped the ante this last week and said that going forward, any new releases that are Microsoft Studios exclusive releases are going to be available on this service from the day that they launch. And I thought, looking at this, I was like, wow, that's pretty neat. I thought this would be as good a time as any to kind of talk about the idea of digital distribution against physical copy and the implications that this can kind of have. I don't know about you, Geno, but now as nostalgic as I am for the physical copy, I mean, face it, part of my childhood was going to the video store every Friday night and picking out a game or a movie to watch, And, there's a bit of a nostalgia for that. But the more that digital distribution rises, the more that I'm starting to lean toward it. For instance, we bought a Nintendo Switch for my youngest last week for his birthday. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but the games on that thing are just incredibly tiny if you get physical copies. So we just came to the conclusion, no, we can't be doing that. We'll be losing them all over the place. So we're just going digital all the way with this system. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on digital distribution, Geno?
Well, I can tell you this about the whole rental thing. I learned a long time ago that anything that you could load onto a hard drive, you couldn't really rent, because I remember a local video store used to rent computer games back in the day, and you could practically steal them because everything would have to go on the hard drive and you wouldn't need the discs anymore. I know a few friends that got themselves a copy of Warcraft for a $2 rental. But anyway, I'm with you on the size of the cartridges because my son has a 3DS, and there's been a couple times that those little things have ended up missing, and thankfully we found them. But and I always found that more helpful that one of the games I bought him, I just downloaded straight on to the system itself. I don't have a problem with digital distribution because as long as you got the hard drive space, and as long as, say, if something happens, like with Microsoft Xbox, your player ID or whatever it's called. As long as, say, there's a problem and then you can download the game again with no problem, they seem to have a handle on that, and I'm sure PlayStation's the same way. I haven't really played much PlayStation since PS2. I don't have a problem with that. The one problem I think I do have without them having physical copies is the whole DLC thing, where people were saying, they could look on the disc and see that stuff was on there, but they needed to have an unlock code basically to get it.
Yep.
That's the problem I don't have, because if they go all digital, then there's no way of telling. Well, granted, if it's all digital, they just release what they want at the time, I guess. But
Yep.
when the stuff was on the disc, people were basically having to pay more to unlock something they already owned. So that's a problem I have. But as long as that's just it. If it's a digital file, though, it's still you're having to buy an unlock code. So it's kind of a on the fence thing there with me. But I think that's one way they're trying to avoid that whole thing of being called out for that. That being said, the convenience of digital, as long as, like I said, you're able to get it if something happens again, it's a good thing, because as long as you got the hard drive space, you're good.
Right. I guess my concerns lie in, what's this going to do to some of the brick and mortar stores that are kind of primarily selling media like games and movies and stuff. I mean, we already seen the video stores kind of go the way of the dinosaur. I mean, I think Family Video is the only like kind of real standing franchise that's left out there. And I think they're making most of their money not even off of the rental services. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they rent out part of their space to like other places like Little Caesars and stuff like that. They make money off of that, and that's where they're making their money now instead of through the rental service. I guess another thing too is just I don't know what you think that maybe this might be doing as far as the movie industry. Do you think digital distribution is going to eventually hurt, theaters and stuff too?
It's hard to tell, because, right now, the way it works is a lot of times the digital version comes out 2-3 weeks before the physical version. So, hey, you want to see that new movie on a video, get it on digital first. See it 2 weeks early and we'll give you this bonus. They're trying to entice people to do digital because it's cheaper, it's easier. It's just file transfer versus having to print things. You just don't know if it's going to sell. Because think about it. Look how many copies of DVDs you see of something that was even a big thing in a store. Everyone's bought their copy and there's still hundreds of thousands of copies.
Oh, yeah.
So when it comes to digital, you're only downloading what you need and they're not spending a dime. So, it's definitely a bottom line thing for them, but it's definitely also a convenience thing. I don't know if it's going to hurt movie theaters unless you still, say like Netflix really catches on with their making movies thing. With the offerings that they've given us so far, the TV shows, yes, they're good, but a lot of the movies, some of them have been okay, but most of them just haven't been great. So, until the big studios get into the digital distribution before theaters thing, which, since that whole box office thing matters to them, that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. I'm not saying it can't happen, especially, say, if Netflix or Hulu or Amazon gets like a big movie hit.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, but eventually it might. But, there's still that experience of wanting to go to a movie. Is it going to hurt DVD sales before that? Yes. It's going to hurt DVD sales before it hurts the theater sales.
Oh, absolutely.
But, the DVD sales, that's going to hurt the brick and mortar stores. But then again, they could offer selling digital downloads too and offer deals that way. So they'll still find a way to make their money. Plus, they wouldn't have to deal with shipping. So, because the company Vudu, at least for a while, worked through Walmart. And they, you could rent or buy a digital movie through Walmart.com for Vudu. If you didn't want to sign up for Vudu, you could still get the movie, but did not have to sign up, for all that stuff. So there's ways that they'll do it. But is it going to hurt their bottom line on movie and game sales? Absolutely. Eventually, the ones that are probably going to suffer the most are the used places like your Mega or Disc Replay, whatever they're called now, or your GameStops or anything like that. Those who are probably going to suffer first.
Oh yeah, I would totally agree. I don't know. I remember you talking about an article, it was a while back, about them entertaining the idea of putting theatrical releases out like in a digital format where you'd like pay to watch it at like a premium price. Do you know if there's any more traction on that? Have you heard anything more about that?
The last time I heard, it's been a while. I know that they were fighting it pretty hard because the theaters were not real happy that they were just saying, well, we'll let you pay us directly, for this movie. Say, you pay so and so amount of dollars for the new Star Wars. Well, those movie theaters aren't going to get their sales cut out of it, their concession cut out of it, or whatever else, IMAX premium costs, or, any other things that they've tried to tack on to make more money. They're not going to get that. So, of course, they're going to fight it. I haven't heard too much more about it. I don't see the consumer, honestly, wanting to pay it because, they like sitting at home watching a movie, but they would rather go to a movie theater, pay $10, have the option to buy popcorn, and then watch a movie versus, we're going to pay $100, we'll say, to stay at home, and plus we have to buy our own food. So, it's, the convenience is nice, but the cost isn't there. If the movie studios found a way to make it cost effective, like a subscription service, where say you would get their old catalog for the $10 a month, and then if you wanted to pay,
30 maybe.
Yeah, $20-$30 to see this movie early, that might fly.
Yeah, I think my thing is too, like, you got to think, going to the theater, it's not even just about seeing the film, it's also about the experience. Let's face it, how are you going to go on dates in Decatur anymore if you don't have a movie theater?
Well, that's just it though. I don't want to see movie theaters go because there is that experience. If I had a big screen like that and a nice sound system like that, I might reconsider. But I like going to see big movies on a big screen. And that experience alone, keeps me going back. Sometimes the people would get me to want to leave, but the experience itself, there's still, for me, nothing like seeing a new movie, especially one I've really been anticipating, on a huge screen with a great sound system. It's so much better than just watching it on my 42-inch television at home. And even if I had even a bigger television, you're not going to have something movie screen size, unless, you're Scrooge McDuck. So, the experience for me, and I'm sure a lot of people will feel this way too, the experience is not worth giving up. And plus, with companies like MoviePass making it easier for you to go to movies, than with their little subscription service that's ticking AMC off. Because everyone ticks AMC off apparently. With them making it easier to go for the movies, they're not going out quietly.
No, not at all. I guess I would just say, to close off here, that digital distribution I think is on the rise. I think that we're not going to see another console generation, at least, that's going to have physical media. Probably this next one around. I'm kind of intrigued to see what happens with it in the future.
Okay, for my topic today, the last couple times we've talked, we talked about Me Too. We've talked about some serious stuff. I wanted to keep it light today. I want to talk about Indiana Jones.
I don't know if that's going to be that light.
Oh no, there hasn't been a lot that's come out yet. Granted, if we start getting into the Crystal Skull talk, then it might get dirty. But and we do have to talk about that a little bit. But
right,
there's been rumors now that Steven Spielberg, his next movie after Ready Player One, after he gets done with all the the hype train behind that and the release and everything, the next two choices for his movies are a West Side Story remake or Indiana Jones 5. We don't know a ton about what's going on with the new Indiana Jones story. It's been off and on for a while now, but they have confirmed that they are making it. It is happening. We do know, basically, and this is a great thing, even though he kind of got blocked at the end of Crystal Skull. One of the good things that happened in Crystal Skull, when Mutt Williams picked up that hat, started to put it on, and Indiana Jones was like, "Not yet, you little brat." There's going to be no Mutt Williams, so that's a fantastic thing. I got in a conversation with somebody the other day.
Do it!
Not on my watch.
It's Shia LaBeouf just going on there.
Just put the fedora on that green screen. I got in a conversation with somebody the other day, and they said, it should have been Short Round in that movie. And I was like, think of it this way. You should be glad it wasn't Short Round, because then it would have been him swinging with the monkeys. there's been rumors about what the new Indiana Jones is going to be, and I want to get your take on this rumor. I actually like this rumor mostly, but it's not what's going to happen. They've already said it was just a rumor, and that is not what's going to happen. They said it's not going to be an aging Indiana Jones played by Harrison Ford telling old adventure stories with a younger actor taking over the role. And they said like Chris Pratt was the front runner of the rumor, And like I said, I like that idea. Because it kind of reminded me of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. And it didn't have to be Chris Pratt because he's literally in everything nowadays, it seems.
Right.
I wanted to get your thoughts on what you thought of that concept, even though that's not what they're going with.
A younger Indiana Jones concept, I think it might be a good idea. Definitely don't want to use Chris Pratt because, he'd be playing the same character that he plays in Guardians of the Galaxy and in the Jurassic films. I think that we would just be kind of getting Chris Pratt being Chris Pratt again.
Chris Pratt being Chris Pratt and Chris Pratt the movie.
Yes. I don't know. I think that if you were going to go with a younger actor, I would almost just be as inclined for them to kind of do it as a reboot or as a retelling of the stories, maybe with a new actor, and we don't involve Harrison Ford. Maybe we do one more movie with Harrison Ford and we kind of go that route in the future. I like the fact that they're announcing that this is going to happen. Of course, they're going to do this. Disney wants to make their money, right?
Oh, of course. And then they got to release the box set and the video games and the serial tie-ins and everything else they can think to slap Indiana Jones' face on.
Oh, absolutely. I just would say, I don't know. I'm a little torn. I think that if it is an older Indiana Jones, I remember you mentioned on your Get on the Mic. I just listened to it about when is it going to take place. I would guess we're probably talking middle of the 60s, Cold War, Cuban Missile Crisis era. Just as long as he doesn't get in a refrigerator to avoid a nuclear strike, I think we're going to be all right with this one.
Speaking of that, I never played I believe it was Fallout. I guess they had a thing in that game where it was a nuclear test site, and they had a fridge there open with a skeleton in it and a fedora, just kind of make fun of that. Do you think that? See, I don't think they could get away with rebooting it. It's not like James Bond, where they've had so many actors do it. Do you really think they would even attempt? And granted, I guess I'm answering my own question because they're doing it with Han Solo, and it's the same actor for crying out loud.
Right.
But do you think they would really try to reboot? They're not telling a past story. Do you think they would try to reboot Indiana Jones with another actor?
I don't know. Give it enough time, and I guarantee you they will. Just because this is Disney we're talking about here. They like to make their money, especially since they've spent so much on Lucasfilm.
See, I just feel that unless Harrison Ford passed away, I don't see them making those movies with anybody else unless it was the rumor that didn't come about. I just don't know if fans would turn on them on that one.
I think you're right. I think it would take after he dies before they do it, but I think give it some time after that. I'm not talking 5-10 years, man. I'm not talking the day after. Give it enough time, they'll consider it.
Yeah, and it's kind of unfortunate that they wasted so much time not making Indiana Jones movies because between Last Crusade and Crystal Skull, I read so many Indiana Jones books, Choose Your Own Adventure books. There was the Atlantis video game. There was they had a couple other games and books, and then of course they had the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, and I feel like they missed out on so much. And then of course Harrison Ford aged, and now he's even older. I don't know if I want to see him do more than one now. Indiana Jones 5, honestly, I wish I don't want them to touch it after that unless, say, maybe do an animated thing or something, because it's almost getting to a point where, even Crystal Skull, yeah, there were some cool scenes with Indiana Jones, but there was a couple times also you're just like, yeah, I don't think he can pull that off. And it's just hard to yes, he's kind of a superhero per se, but he's still just supposed to be a regular guy. and it's just kind of hard to, how far can we get before we start getting into, he's going to be like Liam Neeson, he's going to have the particular set of skills. You know what I mean?
Right.
Indiana Jones is just a regular dude that gets in weird situations, and he just happens to have a nasty bullwhip and a mean right cross. So,
Right.
I mean, I don't know how far they can go with this before it gets to a point where we're just like, he's going to be Indiana Jones in a wheelchair, wheeling down a pyramid or something. I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head there. I'm just afraid they're going to go too far with it. I'm kind of hoping if they're going to do one, it's going to be a big one. And honestly, I think it should be the last one.
Well, I think it's interesting that I kind of think of it this way, too. I think that this series and the Die Hard series kind of like mirror each other kind of in a certain way. I mean, obviously different stories and everything, but as far as like the quality of the films as they've kind of come out has kind of been the same. Like, for instance, I always thought that 1 and 3 of the Indiana Jones series were the best 2 of the main trilogy, whereas 1 and 3 of the Die Hard trilogy were the best 2 of that main trilogy, and then it kind of just started jumping the shark after you got past those. And then we're talking also now about Die Hard being a young John McClane story with old John McClane telling it and narrating it. I think that we kind of got the same kind of theme working between both of these franchises, and it kind of like, I don't know, sometimes you just need to let things lie.
And that's just it. Yeah, I'm afraid that they're going to push it too far. And if they say did one more Indiana Jones movie, like the big blow off movie, and then after that do games or something like that, that would be a great way to do it. I mean, there's ways to tell the story, get Harrison Ford involved without it being on the big screen. I just think they need to work that out instead of trying to, just milk it for all it's worth and then start it over again.
Right. Yeah, just like closing off on that one, I just think, I mean, I'm excited. I'll go watch Indiana Jones 5, obviously. I just don't know where it's going to go after that.
Yeah, I'm just afraid, but Disney's doing okay so far handling other franchises I like, so I'm gonna give them a little leeway. Let's just see what they can do.
That's right. All right, well, time to move on to the main topic of the night. We're going to talk about shared universes, guys. Again, we're going to kind of talk about this in the same format that we've done before. We kind of talk a little bit about things that work, and then things that are sucking when it comes to this idea, and any other thoughts that might come to mind. So obviously in the what works category, I mean, number one on this list, of course, is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I will say about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I mean, obviously this is the benchmark when it comes to shared universes. I mean, they started it 10 years ago and it's still going strong. That's not to say that there aren't some weak links in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Thor: The Dark World. But there's plenty of things but I mean, okay, granted, anything that's even a weak link inside of this is, to me, I don't know about you, Gino, but to me at least, like, most of them get at least a solid 7 out of me. Well, so I don't know.
I mean, that's just it. Even when there's the bad ones, it's like what they say about pizza. Even when pizza's bad, it's still pretty good. You're gonna have some bad Marvel movies. I mean, Iron Man 2 was probably my first kind of bad Iron Man movie, and even it's okay. And still, it at least advances the story, and it's still playing into that overall narrative. So even if the regular part of the movie isn't working, well, they're still advancing the overall story. And most of the movies at least have something to do with that, or they do things that are going to come into play later. The Marvel movies have been kind of a double-edged sword for me, because while they gave us those stories we always wanted, and they built up the big Avengers movies and everything like that, they've also started a nasty trend that we're about to talk about. Because the phrase of the industry was people always just saying, well, we want what Marvel had. And of course it started with DC. DC, of course, wanted what Marvel had, because they had their Batman movies. They had a false start with Green Lantern. They had a false start with Man of Steel, but they tried to right the ship with that one because they didn't want to have to start over again after Green Lantern. And Marvel did it right because they had a plan and they've taken their time. I mean,
absolutely.
I mean, you remember just as well as I do sitting in Iron Man 1 after the credits, and then, when Nick Fury pops out, you knew you were in for a ride in the future, and of course it got to the first Avengers movie and that movie still holds up. I mean, yeah, there's some weak points, but you gotta, you got the heroes together, they got to do the cool stuff, and they've gone from there. Whereas in DC was just like, well, we need to catch up, so let's just do 7 movies within Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice League.
Now don't jump the gun. We're gonna talk about DC all through our what sucks part.
But that's it. It's not just them though. And
it's a bunch.
And really, it's funny that we talk about shared universes nowadays. And I know you've got notes on this too. Of course, they're not the first. There's been shared universes for a long time. It's just not the blockbusters that they are right now.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm just another one of my notes here. The older monster films from the 40s, the 50s, like the Godzillas and the Mothras and things like that. That was probably where you would see that kind of thing starting off, especially when most franchises were kind of owned by one studio most of the time. You had that going on. That and a lot of stuff that they were using too was public domain. So I mean, they were able to kind of just do whatever they wanted to with it. I can't think of any other older things but was there anything in your notes? Do you know?
Yeah. Well, and it's one that they're trying to, or at least it may be DOA now. I don't know. But it's the one that they're trying to redo now. It's the Universal monsters.
Oh,
you had your Draculas and Wolfmans and Frankenstein monsters and everything else doing movies together all the time. Granted, they didn't have this overall story where they were going to meet together and fight Godzilla or something. I don't know. I'm just throwing a name out there. But they did movies together and there was overall stories together. So there was that. Which of course they're trying to redo now in the whole Dark Universe, which is a name they don't even know if they can own because DC's all over them on that one because they have their Dark Justice League that they're working on. So yeah, that's as far back as I could find with shared universe. But then of course there's all the smaller ones too. I mean, they're shared universes per se, but you've got the Alien and Predator franchises.
Yeah, Freddy versus Jason,
the View Askew stuff, which is Kevin Smith's Jay and Silent Bob stuff. I mean, granted that wasn't like bringing together a bunch of different comic books on that one. That was all his creation and everything. But still, all of his movies kind of add together. A character would show up here and there, or especially Jay and Silent Bob.
Kevin Smith's writing in those was very comic book-ish, like as far as like how he was building up his characters and stuff in those anyway, so it made perfect sense for it to kind of mesh together. So
yeah, I mean, there's that. I mean, you can think of anything Henson did. Muppets, Sesame Street, Fraggles have all showed up in movies together and shows together. I mean, Kermit the Frog would do interviews on Sesame Street, things like that. The universe, I mean, everyone wants a universe now. That's the big problem I have with this whole thing, and we'll save DC here for a bit, but here's a few of the universes that were either going to happen or are going to happen. There's the Conjuring universe, which started off as one movie, then they were going to have a sequel, but then they decided to do the spinoff Annabelle, and then all of a sudden they do Conjuring 2, and now they're going to have 2 spinoffs from that, and the last commercial for Annabelle 2, which honestly the only weak movie they've done so far was the first Annabelle movie. The second one was actually decent. And the Conjuring movies are great. But they're doing this whole shared universe, and they even said on the commercial, the next movie in the Conjuring universe. I'm like, oh no, not them too, So there's that. You had the idea for the Spider-Man universe before and after the deals with Marvel, because they were gonna do the Venom movie and the Spider-Man movie and
the Sinister
Six and the Aunt May movie. So there was that. Then you have the X-Men universe. they're going to do that before and after the Fox deal with Disney, because who knows where they were going to go before they sold, because now that they moved back New Mutants, I think that Disney's going to kind of say, okay, that's going to be our starting point and then they're going to keep Deadpool how it is, because why change what ain't broke, but
right.
I think honestly, the reason they moved that and Gambit down the line was that they could end the McAvoy Fassbender X-Men at Phoenix. And when Phoenix is done, they're done. That's the way I think is going to happen. I kind of hope that's going to happen, because then Jennifer Lawrence will be out of the franchise. But
right.
I hate to lose McAvoy and Fassbender, but I think that they're going to start their own thing after Phoenix is done, and that's why they moved New Mutants, because they've got young actors that they can use later on versus this older group that they're like, well, we got a lot of big names here, and I think we want to recast them with somebody else.
Well, I'm just surprised that they are even... I figured they would probably just wipe the slate clean pretty quick, but I guess they're still continuing off the stuff that was already kind of in the books. I mean, maybe just to make things easier on themselves, I'm guessing.
Well, I know that... a lot of people thought they were going to just cancel the X-Men movie, but they've done too much work on it. The thing's coming out this year.
Yeah.
And then the New Mutants is practically done, because it was supposed to come out, I believe, in March or April. And then they're just moving it back. I think it's done. And they're just, it must not tie in to the stuff that they're doing now, the Apocalypse and the Phoenix stuff. I don't think it ties into that, and they're just going to turn it into something else, which is honestly a smart play by Disney, because, why make another movie? And then they're going to take with, what they have with Deadpool and probably use that to offshoot a few things. And then, of course, start their own X-Men, which they could just recast everybody for that.
I'm just curious how they're going to if they continue with this and they're going to integrate it into the cinematic universe, how they're going to go about it. I guess they could use a really easy cop out with like Doctor Strange or something like that, with it being like a parallel existence of some sort. They could always do something like that with them and the Fantastic Four if they wanted to happen to use some of that. Obviously, I don't know. I think they definitely need to reboot the Fantastic Four. There's no reason why they need to continue with that.
Oh, they're not going to save that Fantastic. Grant, you had a great cast that just got wasted. That cast could have done a good Fantastic Four movie, but there's just no way that you could salvage the mess that movie is. And honestly, I think we're going to get news on Fantastic Four and X-Men after this new Avengers movie happens. I think since you're dealing with a villain that can bend reality, something is going to come of that. And that's going to be how they explain, well, all of a sudden there's these things called mutants. Instead, it's being that they pretty much wrote out mutants for the quote-unquote Inhumans.
Oh, my goodness.
Which, by the way...
let's not even talk about that.
Hey, man, I watched the first 2 episodes on IMAX. Boy, was that fun.
Bad.
Thankfully, I didn't pay for it. I paid for it in other ways, but not out of my wallet. But yeah, I think that with having Thanos as your villain, they're going to be able to find ways to bring these different characters in. I don't think they're going to get too big on X-Men. I think they'll maybe have a core group, some of the well-known people.
Right.
But I don't know how big they're going to make X-Men. You're going to probably have a Wolverine, whether it be Hugh Jackman there, which we've talked about this, whether it's him or not. But you're going to have your Cyclops, probably your Jean Grey, a few, Storm and a few people like that. And maybe do a smaller X-Men movie. But
Charles and Magneto will be there too, obviously.
Right, but see, they run into a brick wall a little bit there, because it's like, oh, here we go again. You're bringing them in that quick. We just had movies about those guys. That's what a lot of people are going to say.
Well, but I wouldn't say that necessarily. Look at Spider-Man. It wasn't not too long after that film, and they rectified that amount in 30 minutes worth of footage.
Well, I guess we just have to see how good the Dark Phoenix or the Phoenix movie is, because if they bought it right after Apocalypse, they could bring back X-Men tomorrow and people would be okay with it. But because Apocalypse is just an awful movie. But
Right.
I mean, who knows? The Phoenix movie, it might end up being really good. I have a feeling it's not gonna. I mean, they got it wrong the first time. Let's see what happens this time. But I just don't. I don't know how quick Marvel's going to want to jump into X-Men territory, other than maybe a few key characters. The Fantastic Four are definitely going to be involved, I think, in the next phase. But yeah, it's just not. I don't see how. I don't know how fast they're going to go. I'm afraid they're going to go too fast just to kind of make fans happy.
Yeah.
But they need to take it slow, kind of like they did Spider-Man, to make it work.
I think it would be cool, and I know this is crazy, but I think that it would be worthwhile for them to somehow Thanos just screws everything up, and it's like almost everything kind of just restarts. It's kind of like restarting the cinematic universe with new characters and maybe bringing in some of the other ones. But then, I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here.
Well, as it goes for shared universes, I think Marvel's playing it smart after the next Avengers movie, or after the fourth Avengers movie, not the one that's coming out this year, because they've said that things are going to change after the fourth Avengers movie. I think that they realize that they created a monster that they're eventually not going to be able to handle. So what their plan is to, and I think they did a test run with this with Thor Ragnarok, they're going to do team-up movies. Just kind of do some Dream Team movies and some solo movies. There's that rumored Black Widow movie that, I imagine Scarlett Johansson's already mad about because they already did it better when it was Angelina Jolie Salt. Or that movie with Jennifer Lawrence that's coming out, that Red Sparrow. Have you seen the trailer for? You see the trailer for that?
What was the one that ScarJo was just in? Oh my goodness, it was just like last year or something like that. The one where she was like some enhanced, like spy kind of thing. I don't even remember what.
I don't follow her career too closely.
Right, I can't even remember. I'll have to rethink of it.
But yeah,
what are your thoughts? Little side here. Have you heard a lot of people on the internet are kind of buzzing about John Krasinski and Emily Blunt doing Reed Richards and Sue Storm? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I mean, I like both of them.
I think that would work.
I mean, I saw the Photoshop, which wasn't the greatest of it, but and I don't know if this came. They're going to be in a movie together. It's a horror movie, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head. It's about where you have to be silent or these creatures will get you kind of movie. You haven't seen a trailer for it. I can't remember the name, but it's got both of them in it. I could see them doing really well together. I think
obviously the chemistry is there already.
Yeah, so I don't want to see them make the mistake and go young again with the Fantastic Four. I think we've got enough young heroes. I think especially Reed Richards and Sue Storm, I think should be more, especially Reed, should be kind of an older guy. I mean, I was never a fan of the ultimate Reed Richards, which was kind of a younger dude, kind of like what they tried to do with Miles Teller. I think Reed always should be kind of the stodgy old guy. And I don't know where I want to see him go with like Ben Grimm. I mean, I definitely
Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
That was my fan cast.
I thought the look, other than the fact he wasn't wearing pants of the last Fantastic Four thing, was fine. The actor was fine, but I just think they handled it wrong. I mean, like I said, first having him naked the whole time was weird because they then again they answered the question from Mallrats. Is the thing's
is his
dork
dork
made
is
of
his
rock?
dork made out of rock?
It's like there is no dork.
Yeah.
But it's like, put some pants on, man. But yeah, if they cast those two as those characters, you've got two good actors that could probably pull the roles off. I would be fine with them. I mean, I don't know if I'd want to see them play other people. I'd have to really think about it. But I mean, if they cast those two, I would have no problem with it.
Yep. I also, I guess, going back to our shared universes, I put a couple of video game series on here too. I don't know if I would consider these shared universes just because, like, it's just kind of they're both kind of franchises that kind of bring things together. For instance, Kingdom Hearts is a It's a Square Enix and Disney collaboration where Final Fantasy characters and the Disney movies kind of play into the series. I'm a pretty big fan of that series. I haven't really followed it lately because it's kind of the storyline has gotten really whacked out, and I can't know what's going on. Then of course there's the Super Smash Brothers games for the Nintendo systems that kind of throw all of the classic Nintendo characters together in a big brawl to fight it out, and that's pretty fun too. But I mean, there's not like really any shared universes in the game industry at this point, but I mean, you have these team up things like this. So
I would probably, even though, let me ask you this: have they released Kingdom Hearts 3 yet?
They have not, but it's supposed to come out. It's supposed to come out this year.
I remember they were talking about that back when I had a PS2.
Oh yeah,
but
it's been all like spin-offs and stuff.
Yeah, I know, so they did like what the card. They had like some card, like a video game card game, and I know they had like was like 2.5 and whatever else.
It's my oldest like could tell me everything about it. And I'm just like, I am so confused right now.
Yeah, I would kind of consider Kingdom Hearts a shared universe because, I mean, it is sharing Final Fantasy and Disney. I would consider it more of a shared universe if say, the Disney characters, because I can't remember much about 1 and 2. Those are the only 2 I played.
Right.
I can't remember if the Disney characters, other than Donald and Goofy and maybe Mickey, got to cross over to other, like, say, did Tarzan get to go to Tron World? You know what I mean? So, I mean, in a way, I'd kind of consider it shared universes because they're mixing the movies together in a way. Because, I mean, it's all like it's one big universe and you can travel to different lands, I mean, so I would kind of consider that one a shared universe. Smash Brothers probably not so much because it's just kind of, well, it's one of those, hey, wouldn't it be cool if so-and-so fought so-and-so?
Right, exactly.
I mean, because you could say the same thing for, like the Sonic racing games and any other...
Mario Kart.
Yeah, any other kart racers that, since everyone copied Mario Kart on that. And so, yeah, I mean, I can't think of any video game ones either. I mean, you occasionally have, like... Darth Vader and Yoda showing up in Soul Calibur or Soul Blade, whatever it's called now. They changed the name 500 times. You have, and Link shows up in that, if I'm not mistaken, on the Nintendo version. And so there's different things like that. I mean, they kind of add a little story here and there, but would you consider it a shared universe? Probably not.
No, but it's still cool.
One thing that I've got some notes on is the TV shared universes.
Oh, yeah.
I've been dealing with them, and I'm only really going to mention one because there's a lot of them because you'd have characters from shows showing up here and there on each other's shows. The ones that really stood out for me, and this has been for a long time, is anything that Dick Wolf does. For the longest time, Law & Order has crossed over with not only its own shows, like SVU and whenever they moved to LA and everything else, but they also crossed over with shows that weren't even Dick Wolf's, like Homicide: Life on the Street, which is my favorite show of all time. I remember they had many a times, like I think 3 or 4 times, they crossed over, where you'd have this part of the case is on this show and this part of the case is on this show. And then also, the Law & Order shows also have crossed over with all the NBC's. I'll just call them the Chicago shows because I think they have fire, police, and something else now, probably hospital.
What?
So yeah, I mean, so TV universes do it as well. I think if the best way to do those is use them sparingly, because honestly, that's what Dick Wolf did. He would take someone from Law and Order to establish the new show. Like he'd send, Lenny Briscoe over to SVU, to get him to build that up a little bit, and then they'd send him back to Law and Order, and SVU would kind of get the rub, so to speak. But crossing them over all the time, I think would get kind of old. But the way like they did it worked pretty well.
Well, there's a theory out there that all that Dick Wolf stuff, like, that's all a figment of the kid from St. Elsewhere's imagination because John Munch had crossed over into, I think it was Homicide: Life on the Street or something like that.
And then he started on that show.
Right, and a character from that, I believe, was on St. Elsewhere, which of course was all in that kid's mind at the end of the series. So I mean, anything that John Munch has been in, obviously puts you into that same, or John Munch has any ties to.
That would be all of them.
Being a figment.
That would be all of them. I'll just use something that Richard Belzer himself would say. It's a conspiracy.
Yes.
You know, yeah, I don't know if I buy into that one, because I mean, here's one thing that didn't work for the Dick Wolf shows. J.K. Simmons was in one of those crossover episodes between Homicide and Law and Order, and so he was a criminal in that, right?
Right.
But then all of a sudden on Law and Order, he's like the court psychiatrist.
Right.
So
it's like he plays two different characters.
He played two different characters.
Was it the same character?
No.
Or was it a different character?
No, he was different. He was a different character. Yeah, he was big time criminal the first time. Then it's like, well, we liked him so much, we gave him a recurring role. Same thing with Jerry Orbach, who was probably the most well-known detective on Law and Order, is Lenny Briscoe. He was a lawyer for an episode or two first in earlier seasons of Law and Order, and then all of a sudden they bring him back on and he's a cop. They got away with a lot of that. And one thing that really bothers me is John Seda was on Homicide: Life on the Street, and now he's on the Chicago PD show, and he's a different character. That drives me insane. It's like, come on.
Crazy.
It's like, no, he's that guy. Why is he not that guy?
Yeah, right? Another TV shared universe that kind of gained traction is the Arrowverse. I mean, I think that's still going strong. I mean, I know that Flash and Arrow do well. I'm not sure about what is it? Legends of Tomorrow is the other one.
Well, they have Legends of Tomorrow, and then technically Supergirl's involved in that. I haven't watched any of them, to be honest. I mean, you would think I'd watch every single one of them, but I can't stand 25 episode seasons. So I mean, who has time for that nowadays?
Right.
But apparently they're doing okay, because when one needs an elbow, needs the rub, they kind of bring the other ones over to kind of lift it up a little bit. Because I'm hearing that Arrow wasn't doing so hot, so they crossed it over at the Flash, and it kind of picked up a little bit. So, and then I'm hearing a little bit about Supergirl too, but like I said, I don't follow it that close. But I think if they keep supporting each other, they'll be fine. And also, to kind of mix in a show that didn't last very long, they brought in John Constantine from the NBC show to Arrow. So, you know, because they were wanting to, I guess they're going to be starting some internet version. I think it might be animated, of Constantine, and it's going to be voiced by Matt Ryan, who was Constantine on the NBC show, because everyone loved him so much and was mad that that show got canceled. So, that's definitely shared universe. And honestly, on a TV show is the best way to do a shared universe, because you got time to develop it versus
absolutely,
you know, you just got 2 or 3 movies each year. You've got, you know, each show has as many episodes as they need to cross over and can build it up as much as they need to.
Well, I mean, how many? I mean, they've been doing this for years. I mean, back when we were kids, think about, like, I mean, there have been crossovers from, like, animated TV series and stuff all over the place, I'm pretty sure.
Well, they used Batman the animated series to build up Superman the animated series, which moved into Justice League, and then Justice League Unlimited, and then Batman the animated series also started Batman Beyond. So I mean, and all that stuff kind of shared voice actors and characters, and they all share the same history.
Well, you know what? I think that'd be a good segue to start talking about DC a little bit. That's kind of, to me, that's where their strong suit lies, is in the animated department, in comparison to Marvel anyways. I feel like that the DC stuff is a lot stronger as far as their animated stuff goes than Marvel's.
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, from the beginning, I mean, one of the big time first animated movies that DC did was Batman Mask of the Phantasm. I mean, it even made it to the theaters. A lot of people don't remember that. And then Marvel, you know, saw how well they were doing, because they did Sub-Zero, and you know, they did a few others. They called them movies, but they were like episodes they put together of like Superman, Batman. Marvel tried to do some movies. They did a couple of Avengers movies. They did a Doctor Strange, an Iron Man, and a few others, and they were okay, but all of them tried to just be origin stories, and they were just kind of meh. Whereas in DC started doing original movies like Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, which I will put up against any Marvel cartoon ever.
Under the Red Hood.
Yeah,
that one was
Under
really
the Red
good
Hood
too.
was fantastic. My favorite one's Flashpoint, which you've got the two different Batmans and Flash going back in time to save his mom, and it does the comic justice, and it's actually what the new Flash movie is going to be based on, is that comic as well.
Yeah.
Where you got Professor Zoom and all that stuff. That's just it. DC, I mean, they've had a few misses, and they've kind of got a shared cartoon storyline going on now with Justice League. They're okay. Most of them, they're fine. Some of them have been good. But the overall story is kind of okay. But then they do these one-offs where they're doing The Dark Knight Returns and things like that, where they're fantastic. I mean, The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and 2 together as a whole is, I mean, way better than anything Batman v Superman did.
Right. How was have you seen The Killing Joke yet? Did you watch that yet?
Yeah, that one was one of, I mean, it felt like there was two different movies. Because you had the original Killing Joke story, which honestly I think is okay. I'm not the biggest fan of it. But they tried to make Barbara Gordon less of a victim. So they added this whole story beforehand where they kind of built up her character. And it would have been fine, but the two things just didn't feel like they fit together. It felt like two short stories that shouldn't have even been near each other. And it kind of did injustice, honestly, and no pun intended. It did injustice to Barbara Gordon as a character, because they added this whole thing, which granted, there has always been a thing where she was attracted to Batman, but they have a Batman Batgirl sex scene in this story.
Oh,
and
wow.
really, that would work if it was its own thing, because they teased in Batman the Animated Series that she had a thing for him. Right, so yeah. I mean, it works, but in this it didn't, because it just kind of made her a dumb character, and then she gets shot.
Yeah.
Whereas I think they just needed to have faith that people knew who Barbara Gordon was, and that you just care about her, and you knew she was Batgirl. You didn't have to be shown she was Batgirl. You knew it, and she gets shot. She's not a victim. She got caught off guard by a psycho at her door. So, and I just think that that one, the animation style was weird. The two stories didn't fit together. Granted, you had, Mark Hamill doing the Joker and Kevin Conroy doing Batman, but, that's not everything. I mean, they gave better performances in the Batman Arkham games than they did this one. And it wasn't their fault that this was bad, but, of course, they had to read the stuff that was the Killing Joke. And honestly, it's not a great story anyway. And honestly, that movie is even kind of, you got some people are like, it's the greatest thing ever, and you got some people are like, it's crap. I'm kind of in the middle. There are some things that worked, but it's not one I'd recommend.
Okay. Well, you ready to open the can of worms that is the DCEU then?
Oh yeah, let's do this thing. I'm ready. I don't know if they are, but I'm ready.
Yeah, right. Okay, so honestly, I've still only seen I've seen 3 of the films, because I've seen Man of Steel, I've seen Batman v Superman, and I've seen Suicide Squad. I have yet to see Wonder Woman, and I have yet to see Justice League. But I mean, out of those, we only have one that's been like a real critical success at this point.
Yeah, that'd be Wonder Woman.
Right.
Because I mean, though there were some issues with it, like the last battle felt a little generic, and it just felt like, oh hey, here's Wonder Woman fighting a CG villain. Granted, it looked like a masterpiece compared to the CG villain in Justice League, but the movie itself before that was fantastic. I mean, I had some issues here and there, but nothing that I would say make it a bad movie. But it did the best to build up a new character, which is honestly what they should have just slowed down and did in the first place. Because, look, you got Man of Steel, and say what you will about Man of Steel, it did some things right.
It wasn't horrible.
Yeah, I was okay with a lot of it. I mean, yeah, there was some stupid stuff like, yeah, he could have saved his father too, and things like that. I mean, there was just, they were trying to take a different approach, a darker approach. I get it. I mean, because it's like, ooh, we got to make it dark and moody. But it had its problems, and people complained about him destroying the city, fighting Zod. It's like, what would happen if two superpowered people fought? Of course, they're going to destroy the city. That's why Justice League or Batman v Superman had to come out and say, like 3 times, "Oh, the area is clear. The city is clear. The area is clear," because they didn't want people to think that they were going to just kill a bunch of people. And they addressed that in Batman v Superman, which I think they did fine.
Yep.
Batman v Superman could have been good if they would have slowed down. But Zack Snyder wanted to tell like 7 different stories. I mean, you got everything from the Dark Knight Returns to the Death of Superman to the beginning of the Justice League. Just so many different things going on. And Suicide Squad was just, I mean, there were some things I liked about it, but man, was it a mess. I mean, everything from the Joker, apparently they cut a ton of stuff of him, which who knows if it would have been good or not.
He should have just been the villain in that.
Well, and that's what even the director says. Like, you know what I should have done? It's like, yeah, we know. We watched it.
It was just like, I don't know. Like, my thing with the DC universe is that they should have just, I get it that they wanted to play catch up with Marvel, but did they really need to play catch up per se? Why don't we just do what Marvel did, introduce each of our characters in solo films and bring them together? It would have worked just fine. They would have made ticket sales on the individual films first, maybe not the big gangbusters that they want out of a collaborative film, but if you aren't giving these characters enough depth when you put them all together, nobody's going to care when they're all together.
Well, and that's just it. I'll to answer your question, I'll quote the infamous Farouk Assault from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I want my shared universe, and I want it now. They just wanted it right now. They wanted everything that Marvel had. They saw that Marvel, they were kicking themselves because they were making their Nolan Batman movies and failing miserably in that third one. And I'll debate anybody on that movie any day of the week. But
Dark Knight Rises is not near as good of a film as people want to make it out.
No, and I mean, so they were busy doing that. And I mean, I don't know if they planned on making Man of Steel into a thing into a whole universe thing at first. I think once they saw Iron Man and then they saw Hulk and all that start to build up, they were like, well, we better come up with something. I just think they wanted it now. They didn't want to take their time. They wanted what Marvel had, even though they kept saying, well, we're not going to do what Marvel did. Well, yeah, you're going to do a rush job and mess it up. And that's exactly what they've done, because they don't even know what they're doing now. They keep changing their slate. They keep they've said they don't even know if they're going to do the second Justice League movie, which makes the first Justice League movie stupid because they teased Darkseid. They have Steppenwolf say, I'm building this for my master Darkseid, and so it's like, fine, do individual movies. It's fine. I'd rather they step back and do that and stay away from Justice League. Because if you're gonna fix it, just start doing some individual movies. Flashpoint's a good place to start. The Green Lantern Corps is a good place to start, because maybe we'll get what we didn't get the first time with Green Lantern, which was more Green Lanterns. I don't need to see a Cyborg movie. He was fine in the movie. Oh, that's lovely.
Sorry.
I don't need to see a Cyborg movie. He was fine in that movie, but do we really need him? No. He's a support character in Justice League. Aquaman's already done, so they're going to do it. I mean, it comes out this year.
Right.
To not do another Wonder Woman movie would be a crime. But they're talking, they want to do Gotham City Sirens, which is all the, your Batgirl and Black Canary and Huntress, and then, of course, Harley and Poison Ivy and any other, Talia al Ghul maybe. Anyone, any girl character from Gotham you could think of, which is a good idea. There's a lot of good ideas. I would love to see them step back and maybe do more solo films before even thinking about teaming them up again. Because if they take their time and just build these individual characters up, they could bring them together again and not have to come up with an excuse like what was pretty much what the whole Justice League movie was. Because by the time they got together, it's like, oh, it's time to battle, done. Oh, wait, we gotta, and I'm sorry, spoiler alert, we gotta resurrect Superman too.
Right.
Because they had to deal with that too. So, and by the way, I can't wait for that Blu-ray to come out because I want to see the footage of Henry Cavill with a mustache and the Superman suit. I can't wait to see that. Because you haven't seen the movie. You haven't seen the bad digital botch job that they did trying to take away that mustache off of Henry Cavill. It was awful. So, yeah, they just need to step back, slow down a little bit, build up their characters because characters do matter, and then go from there, not just say, oh, by the way, here's a file containing, all the guys that are going to be in the Justice League movie. This little snippet of Aquaman floating in water.
Out of the woodwork.
Yeah, it's like, here you go, boom, we're done. At least they gave us a Wonder Woman movie, and a fantastic one at that, to build up her. But whenever in Justice League, I mean, granted, I loved Ezra Miller's Flash. That's why I'm looking forward to Flashpoint. But I didn't really care to. I mean, Aquaman was fine. Cyborg was fine. They were fine. And I don't want them to be fine. I want them to be good and great characters. But they need to take the time to do that. But they're doing it after doing the Justice League movie, and that's what bothers me.
Well, okay, even the solo films. I mean, look at Ben Affleck just being back and forth about being Batman. Make up your mind, dude. Do you want to do this or not? Yeah,
I've been saying I've covered that, and I've said crap or get off the bat pot.
Yes.
It's like because he's like, oh, I can't direct the Batman movie because this reason. Then he says that reason. Then he says another reason. I can understand him saying he can't direct it in the suit. I mean, I imagine being a director that's in the movie would be kind of hard to do with however many pounds that suit is on you the entire time. And granted, it would probably mean we would get less Batman and he'd be Bruce Wayne more, and that'd be unfortunate in a Batman movie. But then he's like, well, then I want to direct a Batman movie. And I guess they offered him Flashpoint, which would have been perfect for him because Bruce Wayne is only in it at the beginning and the end. Because when the Flash goes back to the past, Bruce Wayne died. So, and his dad becomes Batman. So we get our Jeffrey Dean Morgan Batman, which would be amazing. But then he would direct he'd only have to direct certain parts of it in the suit, or he could have like a second director take care of those parts, and he takes care of the stuff from the alternate universe. But no, he turned that down. And then now they're talking about, I guess, and I'm okay with this, I guess Jake Gyllenhaal is rumored to be in the wings to take over. Whether he's going to be Bruce Wayne or maybe Dick Grayson becoming Batman, like he's Nightwing first or something, which I'd be okay with that too. I think he would be a great replacement because he's someone that would really, sink his teeth into the role because that's just the kind of actor he is.
Yep. I think he'd do better than Ben Affleck, if you want to know my opinion.
Well, that's just it. The problem is Ben Affleck is, granted, Justice League was a little weaker than the Batman v Superman stuff, but Ben Affleck is a good Batman. He looks good in the suit. I thought the whole digital voice thing would be stupid, but it actually turned out really well. And just he got the part. He understood the part because he's a comic book guy. He gets it. But would I rather see Jake Gyllenhaal take over? You're darn right, because I know that man would become Batman because of other stuff he's done. I have no doubt in my mind that whatever role they gave him, he would become that role, and he would be amazing.
Oh, yeah, I'm down with that. I guess another thing, too, is just the idea that DC had the opportunity to do this way before Marvel ever did. I mean, they owned these franchises way before Marvel had their hands on everything because Marvel piecemealed it out because they couldn't afford it. And now it's like, okay, when X-Men came out in 2000 in the superhero genre, that and Spider-Man around 2002, when that genre became viable again, DC should have just been like, okay, we're going to start and we're going to work our way toward Justice League. And I don't think they were even... I don't feel like they were really trying that even with the Christian Bale movies. I think they were just letting him be Batman movies and not really caring about putting other characters involved in it. And they should have done that right then and there.
Well, there was the rumor that they were going to try to turn The Dark Knight Rises into a setup for Justice League. I mean, they even made the joke that how did he get away from the nuke fast enough? Well, Superman got him, Yeah. There was the whole thing with the George Miller Justice League that they were trying to make. And I can't remember what years those are taking place in. So there was that, but it just didn't work out. And they were going to do the whole thing where Batman had like contingency plans against all the other heroes kind of story. And I guess Armie Hammer was set up to play Batman, which would have been kind of interesting. So there was that. So they tried to do Justice League. I think, I know they wanted to try to start doing a Green Lantern, and of course that failed miserably because no one, really liked that movie. I mean, there was things to like in that movie, but nothing that you could build a universe off of. The only thing they can do now is slow down because, apparently going in fast forward isn't working for them because though they think they've got masterpieces on their hand, all they have is, I mean, if you look at the CG in Justice League, just answers your question about how ready they were not. The villain looks like you remember, I can't remember the dwarf's name, and you're going to school me on this, in The Hobbit.
Gimli?
No, the dwarf in The Hobbit that
the main one
that came to help in the Battle of the Five Armies.
Oh my goodness!
That Chris Connolly.
Dayan.
Yeah, and he looked like a lifeless video game character, correct?
Oh yes.
And that's what the villain in a movie that came out in 2017 looked like in Justice League.
Well, why would they not just do some decent mocap with him?
Well,
did they not even do mocap with him?
They did mocap. Syrian Hines did the voice. They did mocap for the character. It's just with all the issues they had they moved it around. They had the Joss Whedon reshoots. They had everything involved in that movie. They didn't have time. They needed to put a hold on that movie for like another year, but nope, they needed to make their money back. And of course they were going to make some money on it, but
they didn't make what they wanted.
Of course not, because it was a rush job and there were so many problems, and there were some things to enjoy in that movie, but you could definitely tell there was a couple different movies there. I mean, I wouldn't say it was as messy as Batman v Superman, but even Batman v Superman had an overall narrative, where this one, I don't know if they knew where they wanted to go with it, because you could tell that there was a Zack Snyder movie there and that there was a Joss Whedon movie there, because you could tell when things shifted. It's like, oh, it's a little more humorous here. That's the Whedon stuff, and all this dark stuff here, that's that's Snyder. So
yeah,
they need to slow down, because if they don't, they're just gonna all of a sudden we'll have back credit cards that that's why Superman has that's why Superman works alone type stuff coming back, which
yes.
I mean Arnie's probably available to do Mr. Freeze again, I guess.
I mean, okay, even looking back at those, though, at least I could look back at that and watch that and, like, have a laugh at how bad it is. Like, just based on the fact that, okay, it's so bad it's funny, whereas, like, this isn't even, like, humorous bad.
Well, see, that's just it. It's back then, and you can talk about those, and then when comic book movies died for a bit, and then even when they came back, the only real problem we had to deal with those movies was, they tried to introduce too many villains or too many characters. They also weren't trying to cram in, all these movies have to connect too, because they only had to connect to each other,
Right.
And even then, I mean, all the Batman movies, they kind of did, but they kind of didn't. I mean, we had 3 Batmans in 4 movies,
Right.
So, and then you had the same Robin. So but it was still supposed to be the same Batman, but we were fine with that. This, though, you have too much going on plus too much going on. And that's where they're running into a problem.
No, I mean, I guess just to say in closing about DC, and I agree with you, just slow down. If you don't, okay, like, and this is a dumb way to look at it too, but in funny way of thinking of it. Okay, you ever have you seen Beavis and Butthead Do America, where like they joke about like the they're like inside of a trunk or whatever, and then they pop the trunk open and they're driving down the highway, and they're like, well, what do we do? And Beavis, but one of them's like, well, we just jump out.
Yeah, run really fast.
Jump out. Yeah, just run really fast. And I feel like that's what DC's done right now, and I think it's just they're gonna wind up on their faces pretty quick if they don't get it together. That's all.
Yeah, if they slow down, they figure out which movies they want to do, because I mean they're still casting for other movies. I know they're wanting to do. They just cast for Shazam. But then again, it's like, well, are we going to have the Rock Black Adam that you've been teasing for 2 years or whatever it is?
You think he could save this franchise? I don't know.
Who knows? Granted, if he would have been Green Lantern, that probably would have done pretty well, I think, because that was one of the rumors he was going to be Jon Stewart. But I just think if they decide what characters they want to focus on, and then build up them individually. I know this is starting to sound familiar. Build them up individually, and then if you want to bring them together, it might work. You may not get all the money you want right now, but if you do it right, people will watch and they will enjoy and like them and want to see more. Sound familiar? Yes, it does. Because
it's a tried and true formula.
That's the tried and true formula that the competitor came up with first.
Right. Well, I think that pretty much closes it for me with shared universes. Was there any loose ends that you wanted to tie up?
No. It's just I think that there are too many of them. I'm glad that Marvel's stepping away after a while, because then they're going to give us the next phase of what they really want to show us, and then we'll get more characters. We'll get some fun team-ups. I can't wait to see things, and maybe they'll do, like Spidey and Hulk or something like that. Just cool little things that we've seen in comics.
Wolverine and Hulk.
Yeah, by the time that DC catches up, Marvel will be in another universe of their own creation. So, am I okay with shared universes when they take their time? That being said, not all of these that we mentioned are taking their time. The fact that the Conjuring universe is a better shared universe than DC, being that DC has the well of characters that they have, it honestly, as a fan of comics and as a fan of movies, it kind of makes me sad. That's all I got on that.
Yeah. You want to talk about the channel, yours, ours, for a little bit?
Yeah, first of all, if you're watching us on here, it's the Geek B Cubed channel. We're doing this bi-weekly podcast, so if you like what you've heard here, please subscribe to the channel. Also, you could find me on the Reel Geno channel. I do movie reviews. I've got a bunch of retrospectives and Netflix and chances and other things that I like to cover. So if you're not a part of that channel, please subscribe to that channel.
And then as for me, you can find me at HeiseNerd on YouTube. Just look me up. It's 1N. I am also at facebook.com/HeiseNerd1. Just be on the lookout. We got some collaborative stuff we're going to be doing together. I think one of our first projects is going to involve Ready Player One. Just be on the lookout for that. And just, support your small YouTubers, subscribe to the channels if you have not yet, and we do appreciate your feedback.
I also want to share that coming soon with this podcast, with HeiseNerd's podcast and my podcast, we're going to be joining the DNA Digital Network in the coming weeks, where you'll be able to find this podcast and those two podcasts, Get on the Mic, which is mine, and HeiseNerd Speaks, which is HeiseNerd's. You're going to be able to find it on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and other sources as well, so keep tuned for that.
Oh, yeah. Awesome stuff in the future.
Anyway, that's going to do it all this week for the GB3 Podcast. As always, I'm one half of your dynamic duo. Speaking for HeiseNerd, this is the Reel Geno, Geno Reynolds. Until next time, we'll see you later.